have a question for you. Do you think that anime is the highest form of art? Personally, I think it is. I'm Chuck, and you're watching Stories with Chuck. So, I'm not sure when you're watching this, but there's been this recent surgence of people making use of AI to create Studio Ghibli type art. And I'm sure you've seen this, it's been a huge trend, it's been all over the internet. And as much as there's a conversation going on right now about the ethical nature and the efficacies of making use of things like AI, despite the fact that the founder of Studio Ghibli has specifically stated just how strongly he has stands against AI. Is even though there's a conversation around that and whether it's ethical for artists to use AI, I wanted instead to go a different direction here and pose a question. Do you think anime is the highest form of art? I think it is. When we think about what we usually associate as high art, personally, as an African man, whose continent's works of art have been looted and are in the British Museum right now, as someone who's felt like, Europe has always taken the stance that they decide what is high art and what isn't, I think it's curious that we consider that, the highest form of art on this planet might actually be something Japanese. I mean, think about it, right? If you think about the European definition of high art, there's usually things associated with, say, high art. It's usually, the pompous wealth, royal nature of things. It's always been treated like there's a gateway and, particular groups of people or a particular class of people are not allowed to experience said art. And I'm sure we've all felt this with things like the opera, which is considered a high art, with things like, paintings by the likes of Michelangelo or statues by the like of Michelangelo. The sense has always been that, you have to be of a particular type of class to even understand how incredible that high art is. And I don't want to get into politics here, but essentially this is the argument the British Museum has used for when Africans ask for their art back. They say, well, you guys didn't know it was high art until we said it was. So if you're playing devil's advocate and using Europe's definition of high art and consider all these elements of anime, from that biased definition, anime still holds up as the highest form of art, right? It incorporates essentially the best acting in the world through their voice acting, which is high art. It incorporates essentially the most beautiful visuals in the world, which is essentially painting, right? If you think of anime like Akira or even works from Studio Ghibli that are still being hand-drawn, that is art, right? That is essentially the most, come on, Studio Ghibli, we all know this, it's absolutely beautiful, it's breathtaking. So it's right up there with really some of the best pieces of art in the world. And if we consider the storytelling element of it, there's anime with storytelling that makes Shakespeare look like, like a little joke. Like it's like unbelievable storytelling. Like anime like Vinland Saga, in my opinion, has some of the best storytelling I've ever seen. And of course, the goat of story, which is Attack on Titan, right? I mean, it's not even a discussion. Like Attack on Titan has some of the best storytelling in the world across any medium, whether that be movies, theater, whatever it is, even literature. It's right up there. It's unbelievable, right? Then of course there is the element of the scores, right? The musical composition, which are masterpieces, right? If we think about what's considered high art in that arena, think about compositions from the likes of Hans Zimmer. We think of orchestras. We think of classical music. We think of the opera. That too is present in anime, and it's present in the highest level as well. If you think about Attack on Titan, what we have here is an incredible compilation of incredible scores. It's sad, climatic, contemplative music or eerie music, to communicate, the fear, the death, the horror. All of it is within this one anime medium. So then I think it's really interesting for us to have conversations like these, really dive into these conversations and consider, whether things like anime should be considered the highest form of art, even if it is by the limited definition, even if it is by the very biased definition that is typically propagated by places like Europe, by Europe and the particular groups of people who have taken the position that they get to decide what high art is. And the beautiful thing about anime is, unlike all these other forms of high art, that have always felt like there is a thin veil and are really gatekept from the general population. Anime has the exact opposite feeling. Anime has always felt like something that is for anyone. It's for kids. It's for grown-ups. It's for everyone, right? And it's to be appreciated. And there has never been even a financial wall between people being able to enjoy anime because of it being extremely expensive to acquire or even extremely expensive to consume or anything like that. Whereas there are forms of the art that we're talking about, things like tickets for a particular opera, depending on where it is and who will be there, it can get rather expensive. So I think that's also the beauty of anime, is the fact that despite being such an incredible art form, the reason people aren't even thinking about it like this is because it doesn't take itself so seriously. It's never acted like it's above a certain class, or it's floating above the masses and can only be enjoyed by those of a particular taste. Like you get what I mean. You get what I mean. So so as to say then, this is your message to, this is your sign, to go rewatch your favorite anime. To, if you've been considering, or if you've been on the fence about watching anime, start watching it, start enjoying it. And I want you to not just, and because anime is so good, you can get very easy to get lost in the action and the explosions and the madness of it all. But I want you to watch your favorite anime, but watch it from the standpoint of the conversation we've had today, right? Consider everything we've discussed. Consider the visuals. Look at the visuals and think about the fact that human beings sat for hours, thousands, millions of hours probably, creating these one by one, right? Especially in the case of Studio Ghibli, where it's all still being hand drawn. Think about that, right? Think about the process, the grueling process it took to create this beautiful piece that you're watching right now. And then think about the music you're listening to, right? That you're hearing while an incredible scene is unfolding. Think about the fact that a whole orchestra was aligned, or an artist, or a band, or whatever, right? All of these things were intentionally brought in to create the masterpiece that you're watching. And then also think about the story, right? The story that's being told, the characters, the dialogue, the character arcs, the overall flow of the story, the different act structures and what's happening, the instigating incident, all that good stuff, right? Who's the main character? Who's the villain? What are they driven by? What's the main character's motivation? What's the villain's motivation? Who are the side characters? How well fleshed out are they, right? Are they just side characters with no significant character arcs, or do they have their own arcs that are parallel to the main character arc? All those interesting things, right? And also think about really take in the voice acting that you're experiencing at the time. Of course, during an incredible scene, it can be hard to stop and think about how incredible the voice acting is because you're too busy being caught up in the scene, right? The voice acting is working. But I would like you to rewatch your favorite anime and maybe even go over it a few times and try to nitpick all these different things during your favorite scenes, and think about the fact that because of the Japanese principle of Gaido, each and every element of what you're watching in terms of anime is operating at its highest level. Anyway, that's enough ranting from me. My name is Chuck and you're watching Stories with Chuck. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and consider leaving me a like as well as subscribing for future videos where I'm going to be talking about all things stories. And let me know in the comments, do you agree with my take? Do you think I'm completely out of my mind? Let me know. I would love for us to open up a dialogue, a discussion about anime where we're talking about it in a much more different manner. When you think about how we usually talk about anime, you'll find me in comments too, right? Arguing with people for hours at a time about whether, Hiruzen was the villain in Naruto and whether, Danzo could have been stopped, or, discussing things like power scaling, whether Hashirama could solo the Akatsuki, he could. And, all that good stuff, and going back with all the people for hours. But yeah, I'd love for us to have I guess a different style of discussion in the comments about what you think, if you think anime is the highest form of art, and really what your observations have been about anime that make you love it so much. We've discussed why I love it, right? Because of all the elements it combines at such a masterful level. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, as long as we keep it respectful and we're kind to each other as fans, as fans of anime and people who do really do love this medium. Anyway, I'm gonna stop ranting now. Hope you found this video entertaining, and yeah, see you in the next one.